Okay, I finally got the chance to take a look at Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, and you know, I had to find a way to see this film without actually giving the Walt Disney Company any of my money. I'm glad I did because wow, this is very much deserving of a rotten review. And what do you know? Here we are back with another episode of Rotten Reviews. I'm doing Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker many months late. We are up to, well, we're still stuck at 86% on the audience score and up to 98,000 plus verified ratings. Didn't quite make 100,000, but it's close enough. That 86% on the audience score hasn't changed in months. I mean, it hasn't changed since, nearly the opening week of the film. There's a lot of controversy about that. I remember making a couple of videos about that. Many people have. The tomato meter also hasn't budged. It's at 51%. And about half of the critics, even the top critics, rated this as rotten. Half said it was fresh. Controversial, I'm not sure. I don't think it actually is, because I found upon watching this film that I didn't disagree with all of those other YouTubers out there. I thought I might. I thought that some of them might be a little hair trigger on condemning certain things based upon their politics. However, I can say that every single criticism I've seen of The Rise of Skywalker pretty much were the same criticisms that I found myself writing down in my notepad as the film progressed. And I've written quite a list. I have 2 pages in my notebook, actually 2.5 pages in my college bound notebook of problems that was slapped in the face with when I was watching the film at home. And I gave the film the benefit of the doubt, having had seen all these, I had seen all of these negative reviews months ago when the internet was flooded with them. And so I knew I was going into something that I'd definitely be writing down problems. I didn't know I would write down this many, because I thought at some point in the film I would be swept up in the narrative at least somewhat and I wouldn't write things down. And that happens a lot, when I go into a film and I'm expecting to see pure trash. I will have my pen ready, my notepad ready, and I'm ready to jot down problem after problem in roughly the chronological order that I encounter them in the film. And I'll pause the film, write it down, recontinue the film. However, in this case, there was no point during this film in which I forgot to keep writing problems down, because I kept encountering problem after problem after problem after problem, and a lot of them were the same problems I've heard other people's talk about. I have a few other nitpick ones in there I haven't heard people really mention, because they're lost in the sea of bigger problems. Um, and what I mean by problems is not just plot holes, but problems with just basic story logic, problems with pacing, problems with a lot of modern day slang and vernacular that's been thrown into this Star Wars universe. That's very distracting, and I had a lot of those problems. But I'm going to go through my chronological list, and I'm going to kind of do that while I look at the most recent audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm still going to Rotten Tomatoes, because for every shill review that says a movie's good, that's bought and paid for by some marketing company, there are just as many, overly dramatic, if you will, reviews that are thrown on there, like half-star reviews, people saying they wish they could rate it as 0. So it balances out, for every troll that goes on there and puts a really negative review, you have plenty of shill reviews, if you will, that are putting 5-star reviews, and, well, they're kind of trolling too, some trolling for money. So I still go to Rotten Tomatoes, because overall this is going to balance itself out. It's like almost like a pure democracy, assuming that reviews aren't actually being deleted. If we don't get into conspiracy territory, then actually this is still a democratic process, and you're going to get an overall idea of what people think of the film. Now, 86% on the audience score, it's just hard to imagine that 86% of the people thought that this was a great film or that it was overall good or fresh. It's, but it is what it is. And for some reason, 86% of the people that bothered to leave a verified, mind you, audience review um, liked the film. Now, I completely disagree. I went away from this film feeling very empty, not upset, not offended. Um, this is in big contrast for me, compared to The Last Jedi. When I watched The Last Jedi, I actually felt offended by it, that it actually gave me the big middle finger as a Star Wars fan. But this didn't do that. This was more like it just treated the audience and treated me like I was a simpleton, if you will. It didn't offend me, but it just left me feeling empty, as though I had no emotion whatsoever. I didn't feel elated at the end. I didn't feel like I had discovered something or gone on a journey at the end. And I didn't feel rubbed the wrong way or offended or depressed at the end. I just felt nothing as the credits rolled, because it's like nothing happened. It's like I had seen a lot of images and I had heard a lot of sound, and yet a lot of stuff just signified nothing. It was all a lot of just noise in the wash, if you will. That's the feeling I got out of it. Zero feeling. So it was like consuming, Diet Cola that had no flavor. I just had nothing to. I have nothing to say about it emotionally. Um, so it's just strange. There aren't many movies that I get that feeling from. I'll either really like them or I'll really dislike them. I'll feel something, some kind of emotion. I felt absolutely nothing. It was like Disney just spent all of this money. J.J. Abrams directed all of these actors. A lot of resources were put into this film, and yet it all signified exactly nothing. And you could really just skip it because nothing happened. I mean, the character of Rey, she ended up as a super powerful, godlike Mary Sue character, and she started that way in the beginning. And she was like that in The Last Jedi. And none of the other characters had a real arc. They weren't changed. They weren't any better or worse off than they were before. And of course, the big bad villain, Emperor Palpatine, we'd seen him rise and fall before throughout the original Star Wars saga and throughout the prequels. And as bad as the prequels were, at least they told a story. Characters had arcs, things changed. They were left in a different position than they were at the beginning of those films. And this one, no. Everything's, it's come full circle into complete nothingness. And there are a lot of theories about why that is. People say J.J. Abrams couldn't fix all the damage from The Last Jedi, and so we were given a mess. It almost feels like Disney wanted to just get it over with. It wasn't so much about making much profit. They knew they wouldn't, so they just threw it together to wash their hands of it. They just wanted to walk away from it and do something else. And you can't really blame them with all the stuff that went on after The Last Jedi. But in any case, in my opinion, this trilogy, if you can even call it a trilogy, it pretty much was left at the point of failure after The Force Awakens, again by J.J. Abrams, because he had just followed along with a remake, a kind of very bland retelling of the first Star Wars movie, 1977, A New Hope. And he hadn't really given us anything new to work with. And then Rian Johnson came along and decided that, well, he couldn't think of anything original either, so he just decided to, quote, subvert our expectations and, gave us all the middle finger. And then what are you left with? Well, J.J. Abrams came back and he just didn't know what to do with that. So he just went and just tied everything up as quick and rapidly as he could and just kicked it out the door. And that's what it feels like. So anyway, I'll get right to the first audience review because I don't think we're going to see different reviews than we saw months ago. But we're going to see certainly that they're more recent because this has been released on Blu-ray, and I'm confident it's on Disney Plus. Now, like I said, I didn't give Disney a dime of my money, and I'm never going to probably. They've just done so many things, even with their political opinions, that have rubbed me the wrong way. that I don't think I'll ever give them a penny of my money ever again, at least if I have something to say about it. So I went out on one of those ships that sails the tall seas, and I acquired it that way. And in any case, that was enough for me, one viewing. Now, when we get to the first review here from 2 days ago, half a star, I don't understand how so many people like this movie. Putting aside the massive plot holes, bland characters, and uncompelling story, this movie has utterly destroyed the original trilogy. Anakin didn't find the good within himself and kill the Emperor. Luke didn't succeed in freeing galaxy and ending the greatest evil in existence. No, the credit that goes to Rey Skywalker Palpatine, the most bland protagonist we never wanted, a Mary Sue with no growth or development whatsoever. And it goes on. But yeah, that's pretty much the sentiment that's been out there for months now. A Mary Sue, it's a character that was always pretty much perfect from the beginning, and never has to change because there's nothing to change, right? She had all the powers at the beginning. She was magically good at everything from the beginning. She solved every problem from the beginning. And so there was nothing for her to do except to display increasing amounts of power as the running time of these three films went on. And at the top of my list, it's Rey Can Fly. Um, yeah, we're shown right away in our first scene with Rey Skywalker in this movie that she's levitating over a canyon out in the jungle and levitating rocks, boulders alongside her, and she kind of acrobatically, gracefully flies across onto the ground. And it's shown that basically she can fly using the Force. It's no problem. She can levitate heavy objects, of course, and she can fly. So of course, this takes away from anything later in the film showing her scaling up the heights of the wreckage of the Death Star. Scenes that are supposed to be somewhat perilous, that we're supposed to wonder if our hero is going to be able to scale these dangerous heights. Well, showing her flying from the very beginning like Superman does kind of negates all that, doesn't it? I mean, what's the point of all this? It's just J.J. Abrams probably heard all the criticism from The Last Jedi of Rey being a Mary Sue, and it's almost like he was rubbing it in her face to make fun of it, because things later in the film, a lot of things, not just Rey flying, but a lot of things in this film later in the plot that are supposed to normally be suspenseful for the audience have already been rendered as jokes by things that came earlier. And Rey flying is probably the biggest one, but that's right at the top of my list as a problem that stuck out to me. Rey is suddenly flying. Okay. That also subverts everything else we've seen in Star Wars. I mean, if powerful Jedi were able to fly, how come Darth Vader never did it? How come Emperor Palpatine never did it? How come all the other Jedi we've seen in the other Star Wars movies never pulled this trick off when it would have saved their ass or their life or their friends? It makes no sense. And then my second thing on the list is another distraction. And I said this film has a lot of modern day vernacular in it, slang. And right away, the first thing like that popped out to me that I haven't heard a lot of other people talk about is in some dialogue towards the beginning of the film, Poe says, when he's talking about a ship taking off, T minus 5 minutes, or T minus five might be the exact quote. That's, of course, lingo that we've all heard from NASA launches from the 1960s and maybe earlier. T minus, it's stuff like that. Why would somebody at a galaxy far, far away, a different galaxy, a different time, different culture, why would they be using language like that? I mean, it just popped out to me as a distraction, when you're trying to enjoy a movie, and right in the first opening scene or two, you get these weird vernacular distractions, and it carries on. Further down in my list, I have other ones, such as Stormtrooper saying cool. There's a scene on board Kylo Ren's ship where a group of black-clad soldiers go by a couple of stormtroopers stationed in a corridor, and they are the Knights of Ren, which are very much underused and underexplained even in this movie. And they walk by, and one of the stormtroopers turns and comments to the other, "Oh, that's the Knights of Ren." And then the other stormtrooper turns to him and says, "Cool." Really? So stormtroopers are saying cool, and I mean, there's a lot of this stuff in the film in different parts. and you just have to wonder what are they thinking? Is this J.J. Abrams making a joke? Is this like an inside joke that's just not that funny? Because the other thing about this is it has a lot of things that fell flat, like dialogue that sounded almost cringy and was kind of fell flat and didn't make a lot of sense to have the characters waste their time to say it. And then I realized that a lot of these were attempts at putting some kind of Marvel-esque humor, like quips, Marvel type comedy quips into the film. And then it occurred to me that, yeah, whoever wrote these, they were really bad at it because none of them were funny. And it just left me feeling like, why are they wasting all the dialogue? Why is a lot of it wasted to have no effect on anything? But they were trying to put like Marvel-esque type humor in it, and it just completely failed. It took me a while to realize that that's what was going on, because a lot of the dialogue opportunities that, in your running time, even if it's over 2 hours, you only have so much time to take advantage of all the tools at your disposal to tell this great film, to show people things. And if you waste your dialogue on things that don't have any effect, that the audience, it just goes in one ear and goes out the other, you're just wondering, why did they waste all this dialogue, all this running time? Well, a lot of it was just humor that didn't work, and it took me a while to realize that. But let's read another audience review, see what else we find in it. This is an episode of Rotten Reviews, so I'm not going to waste any time on anything that's above a 3-star. I feel like not even entertaining 3-star reviews, but no, I'm going to be fair. All my other reviews, I entertain 3-star and below, and so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to entertain all the 4-star and 5-star reviews that just repeat the same damn thing, saying, "Oh my God, it's the greatest film, an emotional ending to the greatest saga of all time, worth watching." And they all say variations of this, like this one right here. But I'm going to skip that because there's no point. This is a rotten review for a reason. Here's half a star. It's crap, 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 it's crap. Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm looking for a little more specific stuff. Here's another half star from 5 days ago. The movie is weak on its own, but as a conclusion to the trilogy and to the saga, it is just a shame. It is unimaginative and boring, nothing new. The desire of filmmakers to play safe absolutely destroyed the potential of the sequels to bring worthy to Star Wars. The dialogue seemed to be written by a 5-year-old, and the pacing is terrible. Bringing Palpatine, Jedi spirits, and stupid reveal of Rey's parentage all in the second part of the last movie makes TROS, which is, the Rise of Skywalker, an absolute mess. Well, they hit a bunch of things that are on my list. They're not exactly in that order. The pacing on this is incredibly rushed. Like, I actually looked at the running time when it really started to bother me, and it was about 18 minutes into the film, and I checked that time deliberately because at the 18-minute mark, I finally almost couldn't take it anymore, the pace. So much stuff was happening, so much stuff plot-wise was happening at such a pace that it was like one thing would happen, and before you could even process the one thing happening at all, something else would just shoot right in and interrupt that and bring you on to the next thing happening. And it was just interrupted thing after interrupted thing after interrupted thing. Like, you had no chance to even look around to see a reaction on anybody's face when some major thing happened, because something else would just shoot into the scene and take you on to the next thing and just interrupt everything almost in mid-sentence. You were just skipping, like almost like the light speed skipping crap they introduced in this movie. You were literally just jumping from plot point to plot point to plot point with no relief, not 1 second to process any of it. And by 18 minutes, remember, this is a movie that's like 2.5 hours. Yeah, by the 18-minute mark, I checked, 18 minutes and something, I was already overwhelmed by all the stuff happening, and this continued on for the next 2 hours. I mean, it did not stop. Now, the original Star Wars films and the prequels particularly, had boring, long dialogue scenes and reflective emotion scenes and real bad romance type stuff that just slowed the plot down in the other direction. The original films were more perfect, like a film should be. It had fast paced parts, it had quick things happening, it had like slow, reflective parts where people had the chance to reflect on things, and you get your emotional dialogue and you get the audience to feel an impact before the next big thing happens. The first movie was fantastic at that. However, this was just like going to explosion to lightsaber battle to chase to explosion to development to reveal to explosion. It just never stopped. 18 minutes in, I was like, wow, I don't know how long this can go on. And surprisingly, it went on for the next whole running time. It did not stop. The whole running time of the movie just kept going like that. What else did they mention? The dialogue seemed to be written by a 5-year-old. Yeah, not just the Marvel-esque humor that fails, but there's dialogue where it's cringeworthy bad, almost to appeal to cartoon. Kids watching a cartoon would hear this kind of dialogue. Very small kids, like 5-year-olds, and yet it's subject matter that can only be tailored to adults, so it doesn't make sense. For example, when Admiral Hux is, when he reveals that he's a spy, he's been a spy feeding information to the rebellion because he wants Kylo Ren to fail so badly. He hates him so badly from the stuff that happened in the Last Jedi. Yeah, he just comes out, pops in, and says, "I'm the spy." Okay, that's like something out of a kid's cartoon, but it gets worse because then when the when our hero characters encounter Hux and they quip back, they ask him, "What?" Like they're shocked. Okay, Hux tells them, "Oh, well, I don't care." Let's see, where is it on my list? He says, "I don't care if you win. I only care that Kylo Ren loses." This is a war. It's not a game. It's not like a soccer match. But the way he says it, it's like little kids on the playground talking to each other about things, like about something that happened during recess. The dialogue's very much like something a little kid would write, something that would be in a kid's cartoon. And yet these are grown men talking about stuff in a war involving life and death and people getting blasted. And yet Admiral Hux is like, "I don't care if Kylo Ren, I don't care if you win. I only care that Kylo Ren loses." This is really crap, kid-like, childlike dialogue. And, I've got so much stuff written down. It's quite a while into my list that happens because that's into the running time of the movie quite a bit. Let's see if I can actually find it there. There's so much stuff I wrote down. Oh, yes. Hux dialogue is childlike. "I'm the spy." And then he follows that with, "I don't care if you win. I need Kylo Ren to lose." That's the quote. And he says it like a kid would say it on a playground about some playground bullying or a fight or something. No, this is a war with people living and dying. And that's why everything in this movie has no believability to me. Like all the events that happened at the end of it, I felt nothing because you can't get into it. You need to get into it, suspend your disbelief. It's just like you're watching all these events happen, but like you don't believe any of it. It's just like very expensive stuff going on the screen. The acting's not bad for the most part. None of the actors, nothing in my notes. I have no note in these 2.5 pages of notes telling me that any of the actors did a bad job. No, the writers did a bad job. There are so many flaws, but despite the actors all performing adequately, it just was not believable. Nothing they did or said was believable because the writing was bad, the dialogue was bad. So anyway, bringing the reviewer goes on, bringing Palpatine, Jedi spirits, and stupid reveal of Rey's parentage. Yeah, it's like there's so much stuff thrown in here, and you can kind of use your imagination to say that, well, okay, Snoke was a clone because, J.J. Abrams made sure you saw Snoke floating, copies of Snoke's physical form floating in tanks like he's a clone. Okay. Palpatine's kind of suspended on the end of a crane and like a mechanical arm. And he's kind of still kind of rotten and not quite all the way alive physically. you can kind of use your imagination to say, well, maybe somehow he's been put back together. But when you saw the end of the Return of the Jedi and the massive explosion, like a lot of stuff's just never explained. You know, you have the wreckage of the Death Star, the bigger Death Star from Return of the Jedi, that's on a water moon of Endor. Um, so much intact that there's functioning mechanical stuff inside, power to stuff inside. All of this stuff is shown to you. It's all deliberately shown to you, and you're just supposed to use your imagination on how any of this is possible. Um, it's really bad. There's just so much stuff thrown together in here, along with Force ghosts that some of them look like Force ghosts, like Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia are in this film as Force ghosts, and yet Han Solo's in this as a real person that's supposed to be in Kylo Ren's mind or something, but he's not a Force ghost. He stands right there as a real person, has conversation with his son, and it just doesn't fit with all the other stuff. It just, none of this is believable. You're just left wondering why all this money went into this film, and none of it's even halfway believable. There was no point in this where I was swept up enough even for 5 minutes to not be writing something down that was a problem. I mean, that's pretty bad. 5 stars that tell me it's the best Star Wars movie. Like I said, they all say variations of that. Are they bots? Maybe. But again, for every bot thing on here, there's one that's half a star. Um, I still don't understand how it gets 86%. It's hard for me to believe because like the number of really bad reviews is enough to compensate for all the 5-star reviews, and yet we're not at 50% on the audience score. We're at 86. So I don't know what to make of that. I really don't. I'm not going to go into conspiracy territory, but according to critics, this should be around 50%, and the audience reviews look like it should be at about 50% too. In any case, half a star, cringy plot and sloppy storyline. That's really understating it. Here's one from August 9th, so like a week ago. 1.5 stars. The main factor in this movie is luck. They are going from A to B with luck and have had luck to find old actor and have luck again, killed someone, no luck. It was a different ship and so on. Worst was space horses on a spacecraft, and no, she is not a Skywalker, she is Palpatine. I hope they really decanonize these movies. They are not canon for me and never will be. Okay, first off, yeah, I have that in my notes in a few places too. A lot of things happen in the plot that are just lucky coincidences. They just happen because the plot needs them to happen, otherwise the plot doesn't work at all. And so, for example, the heroes are being chased on a desert planet by stormtroopers with jetpacks and speeders, and they happen to just crash their getaway vehicle, their skiff or their speeder or whatever you want to call it. They just happen to crash it in a place that has this quicksand, and when they get sunk into the quicksand, and the caverns that they pop out of under the quicksand just happen to be the exact place with the Sith dagger in there that they were looking for. Out of all the places on the planet that they could have been chased across the desert, that's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, imagine if Indiana Jones had found the Ark, not by, locating the Staff of Ra and all this stuff, but what if he had just been chased across the desert by the Nazis and his truck had broke down in a spot in the desert, and then he had fallen, into a hole, and then the Ark just happened to be there. This is the kind of stuff this movie does, like several times. And then after they had this Sith dagger, they just happened to go to the perfect spot on this water world of Endor to hold the dagger in just the perfect position for the teeth of the dagger to show them on the Death Star wreckage where in the wreckage the room or chamber would be that would have the Sith holocron, this MacGuffin they were looking for. There's a lot of stuff like this, and just people popping in and happening to meet them at just the perfect time. For example, Lando Calrissian, he just happens to be hanging out in the exact spot where they happen to be chased by a stormtrooper in this Burning Man type festival on this desert planet. He just happens to be right there. I mean, you have to remember, a desert planet on, I don't care how small the planet is, even if it's smaller than Earth, how many square miles of that desert planet and different cities and regions and festivals going on and things going on that planet, what are the odds that you would just be in the right exact place at the right time to run into an old friend from another part of the galaxy? And then, as luck would have it, Lando Calrissian is just prepared to deal with them. He knows what they're up to, and as luck would have it, they all recognize Lando Calrissian. A guy that's aged 40 years. They just all recognize him, including Rey, who in the earlier movies, from the very beginning of her story, had thought that Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and the events of the first Star Wars trilogy were all just myth. And so she had said, well, oh my gosh, you mean the legends are true? Like as though they were just bedtime stories taught to her. And yet all of a sudden, a 40-year-old Orlando Calrissian, a minor player in her myth, just happens to show up on a planet she's never been to before, exactly where she is. And he just shows up and she immediately recognizes who he is, and so do her sidekicks. What? This is just, it's all in my notes, but there's so much stuff. It's just, yeah, a lot of things happen, just lucky coincidence after lucky coincidence. So they're right on that. Half a star, it's trash. Half a star, back to safe zone. The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars ever. Nothing new in this episode. Wow, well, I'll have to say that this reviewer and I do not agree. But if I had to say, was this better than The Last Jedi? I would say yes, it probably was, because at least The Last Jedi got an emotional reaction out of me. It got a negative reaction, but it got a reaction. This film was just like I was watching a whole lot of expensive stuff going on, and I'm wondering why. And of course, I was going to finish it because I wanted to actually finish it to do an honest review of the film. But if it hadn't been for that, after about 18 or 19 minutes, as I said before, I would have just shut it off and gone back to watch something else more unremarkable on Netflix, because yeah, there was just a whole lot of rapid fire stuff going on and I felt nothing for any of it. But at least The Last Jedi, I got something out of it. So I think, as hard as it is for me to admit it, The Last Jedi, despite it being trash, was actually a better movie in a lot of ways. At least more things made sense. At least it wasn't all just luck. At least despite um, deconstructing and disrespecting and ruining the previous Star Wars movies and the canon of Star Wars, at least it had more sense within its own story. It was more like a traditional movie that made more sense despite its flaws. So yeah, this is just just like the worst kind of disposable nothing compared to The Last Jedi. So I would say The Last Jedi is an actual better film, despite I think it's a crap film. 1 star, August 7th, 2020. Full of plot holes. A Star Wars movie should be better. From being a massive OT original trilogy fan, I now have no interest in ever watching any Star Wars movies again. The end of a boring and unnecessary trilogy. Yeah, it was a boring and unnecessary trilogy made by, corporate meetings in boardrooms, and it very much feels like something that used to be a work of art, and then a bunch of guys sit in a boardroom, executives that aren't really artists, of course, and as we know, corporations aren't designed to create art, and so they have a piece of art, and then by corporate committee they pump out this garbage, and it's worse than the worst fast food meal you'll get from the worst burger chain, because there's no flavor here at all. It's definitely boring, but it's not just because of this movie. I mean, Force Awakens was a better movie technically, more cohesive, had promise. It wasn't bad, it wasn't offensive, but again, it was going along with just being a product of corporate committee. Plot holes, yeah, but all of the movies in this trilogy have plot holes. This one has even more, but they were there all the way from The Force Awakens. Um, you know, they say they have no interest in ever watching Star Wars movies again. Well, I don't either, but I felt that way pretty much. I felt that way after the prequels. Like after The Phantom Menace, I felt that way. I didn't even bother to see the second and third George Lucas prequel movies, because the first one, The Phantom Menace, had rubbed me so wrong in the movie theater that I figure I just wrote the whole thing off for little kids. Um, but they are not nearly as offensive to an original trilogy fan as the Disney ones are. But after The Force Awakens, I felt very empty. Like, I still felt good about it, but I felt empty. Like it wasn't. It was unfulfilling, but it wasn't just totally empty like this film. Um, yeah, I can't say that this film or even the Disney trilogy turned me off of Star Wars, because I was already mostly all unenthusiastic after what George Lucas had done. And as I've said before, in my belief, um, it was the ending, the final act of Return of the Jedi that actually killed Star Wars. But to me, it's like in a movie where, or in real life for that matter, where, somebody is shot several times by their enemy and their body's still moving forward to attack the shooter, but they're actually already dead. They've been hit 5 times by bullets in the torso, but they're still moving forward and running. But it's not for a while later that they actually face plant into the concrete and their body stops twitching and they're declared dead. But they're pretty much dead after 4 or 5 rounds hit them. And that's what Star Wars felt like to me. The final act of Return of the Jedi actually killed it, dealt all the killing blows, but it took the prequels to like get that body to hit the ground finally, and then it took Disney to finally give it its last death spasm and gasp or gurgle or whatever before the body could officially be technically declared dead. So I'm not going to say the Disney trilogy killed Star Wars. It was just its last spasm. Corporate committee at Disney, corporate executives, and their henchmen, if you will, kind of tried to reanimate a corpse, but it was already a corpse. So anyway, half a star down here, August 4, 2020. I can't believe the score on this movie is so high. Neither can I. The story writing for the last chapter of the Skywalker saga is so painfully bad. I don't blame Disney for wanting to erase these movies from the canon. This movie is only good for a few fleeting moments of fan service while you scream silently, is this the best they could do internally? Yeah, there's people mentioning already about the possibility of Disney erasing these from canon, but really, that's kind of wishful thinking. Like, it doesn't make any sense. These aren't novels that people can just ignore. Star Wars started out as a film. It wasn't like a novel that was adapted to a film. In fact, the film was adapted to a novel. I remember back in the day, people were reading the Star Wars paperback where I lived, but it was already a film that had been released. So you can't decanonize this like you can just ignore a series of novels after you don't allow, more novels to be written in that line. These movies will always be out there. They'll always be on Disney Plus, or even if they're not, even if Disney were to like somehow magically decide for whatever crazy reason to remove them from Disney Plus and stop selling them on Blu-ray, people already have copies of it. It's never going away. It's kind of like saying that the Star Wars holiday special is going to go away. No, it's not, because plenty of people have copies of it in different forms, and it's online for viewing at any time, and these aren't going away. So there's no way for them to decanonize it. Like, they can produce, like they can say, hey, our next movie's about, it's going to explain how these movies took place in an alternate timeline. But that wouldn't be actually decanonizing it. That would just be kind of saying, well, you're allowed to disregard the others because that's an alternate timeline. I don't even think they're brave enough to do that, because these are always going to be out there. So decanonize outright, not really possible. It's wishful thinking on people's behalf. I recommend people just do what I did during the prequels. After I walked out of the theater, I saw The Phantom Menace on its second week of release, and I wasn't totally enthusiastic because I kind of knew what was going on in it, but I went to see it. And, after I realized that I didn't care for it at all, I wasn't offended. I just kind of like got into other things. I just forgot about Star Wars, because that's what you do. If you don't like something, you don't get all crazy and just sit there stewing about it. You just like find something else to be into, and that's what I did, and that's what I recommend other people to do. just like find other material, go watch other movies, get into different fantasy and sci-fi. And that's, what people should do, in my opinion. Don't scream internally, though, because you're just going to hurt yourself. 1 star, August 4, 2020. Movie was so fast paced and didn't make sense. So many contradicting things when you take into account the other movies. Lots of plot conveniences and nonsense. Yeah, a lot of lucky things happen. A lot of things have to happen just that way to make everything work. Um, Fast paced, like I said, 18 minutes into this, I almost couldn't take any more of it. It was that fast paced. Contradicting things, yes. Um, you had like things that were set up as plot devices that didn't make any sense. Even given the fast pace, it didn't make sense. I had enough time to realize, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Like, how do you hide a whole planet with, and have some kind of device that's a key to finding the planet and somehow keep this secret? Because, okay, yeah, let's say you hide a planet and you put the information about where to find it in this Sith holocron, which is like a magical navigational key where you can plug it into your ship's nav computer and you'll find the planet. What stops you from going back to the planet again after you've been there once? What stops somebody from tracking you to the planet and finding out where it is without your Sith holocron? It doesn't make any sense. But yet they went along with this as though this is some airtight plot device. Wow, it's just there's so much stuff like this, and even despite the fast-paced stuff going on, it wasn't fast enough where I believed the Sith holocron was logical in any way. And the other thing is, there are things that don't make sense, such as ships can't navigate without some kind of navigational beacon. This never happened in Star Wars before. Like, Star Destroyers don't need some magical radio beacon somewhere to be able to get out of space dock or figure out which way is up on a planet. I mean, what? And then how do you hide a planet? Like, let's say you do hide a planet, your Sith, super secret Sith homeworld planet. Okay, when you have to have contractors come in and build all this fleet of ships for you, how do you hide it now? Like, if I were building a super secret fortress, like in some mountain somewhere in, I don't know, in the Rocky Mountains in America, what happens when I have to have different workers and contractors and stuff come in and put the foundations in and dig the stuff out for the basement and install the electrical? Unless I'm going to do this all by myself with just me and my friends, and nobody else is going to know about all this, and we're going to build this entire thing ourselves. How are we going to keep this secret? Somebody's going to know where it is, and there's going to be a road going out to it, and etc. And even if there isn't, helicopters and planes are going to the house or going to land near it, and like, it's just not feasible on Earth to hide a house, like a big giant expensive house, from everybody. Somebody's going to know where it is. So how does Emperor Palpatine build like thousands of Star Destroyers with all these Death Star weapons on them, and then crew them all, of course, with, in Star Wars canon, it takes like more than 10,000 crew. It's way more than 10,000, I believe, to crew one of these Star Destroyers. So how do you keep all this secret with all this logistics going on, with all these supplies, with all the contractors, with all the, the construction of this going on? You don't know any of this is going on. None of the other planets in the system or around there see all this traffic going in there or hear anything about this. This makes no damn sense. And despite the pace of the movie, it's so obvious none of it makes any sense. I guess it would if you were 6 and if this were a cartoon or something, but this is not geared for kids. It's geared for adults. I just don't get it. 2 stars. This is what you get when you don't plan a trilogy and have to put it all together in one movie. A rush, sloppy mess. Yeah, it's like there was no plan. People have been saying this since The Last Jedi. It was obvious that J.J. Abrams had no plan. He just set up the first movie. That's what the plan was, and it was somebody else's problem to continue on with the next 2. And yet, higher up, the executives at Disney had no plan, and it shows. Like, this was an emergency. This film was just an emergency fix to just get it out of their hair, to end this and just move on, I guess. And I doubt it even made much money when you take marketing costs into account. It probably cost them it probably cost them financially a lot more than it helped them. Because you've lost toy sales, you've lost other merchandise, T-shirts. I mean, the original Star Wars trilogy, I remember seeing my friends and I, we had Star Wars curtains, Star Wars bed sheets, Star Wars toys, Star Wars this and that, and I mean, you name it, there was Star Wars merchandise being sold all throughout the 70s and into the 80s. They've lost all of that because of this mess. And so I would have to say this has hurt them. They've lost money on all of this, despite even maybe making a moderate box office product or profit, return on their investment. The return on their investment for the purchase of Star Wars, Disney's purchase, it has not returned on its investment. They've lost more than they've gained. That's my opinion. Let's move on. 1.5 stars, a humiliating end to the Skywalker saga. 2 stars, a humiliating, okay, it's a repeat, but it bears repeating. It is a humiliating end to the Skywalker saga because it's not even the Skywalker saga. I mean, that's another point I should make. The Skywalker saga, you would think it's about a Skywalker, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, their relatives, their kids, something. But there's very little Skywalker here. The only Skywalker is the final insult to this thing where, you know, Rey decides that her last name is now Skywalker. Calling it the Skywalker saga is like, they should have picked something else, because the first thing they did with anybody related to a Skywalker or any of the original characters from Star Wars was to kill them all off. You know, that's what they did. In The Force Awakens, they brought Han Solo in just to kill him off. They brought Luke Skywalker into The Last Jedi just to kill him off. Princess Leia was killed off in this. So it's like, shouldn't it be called the Skywalker's death saga? Or, you know, I mean, it's just very strange, very strange. You know, here's a 3.5 star. I'll read it because it sounds like they're not really into this, but it is 3.5 stars. I'm not against the new trilogy. I'm not. The Last Jedi is one of my favorite Star Wars movies, actually. But this movie bites off more than it can chew. By a lot, actually. It adds 20 new unnecessary characters. Nothing in the final third feels earned. What you were allowed to say about The Last Jedi that it evenly divided fans, you can't say about this one. I'd recommend it nonetheless. The thing is, this is the kind of movie you have to form your own opinions about. Well, everybody's going to form their own opinions. But, you know, they nail something that I had in a few places here in specifics. Yeah, they introduce a lot of new characters that don't really do anything. For example, the worst one of all is this Zori Bliss character. She's like a rogue bounty hunter type that is encountered by Poe. He's from her past. However, they waste her entire character by putting her in a suit where you never see her body or her face at all except for her eyes. The only thing you see of her face are her eyes. So even though you can hear her dialogue and she sounds like she's doing a decent job acting, all you see are her eyes, which are very unexpressive. And so it's like, not only does she not contribute anything to the film and there's no time to develop her and she has no big role in it, but the only good lines she had, you don't see any expression on her face. It's just her eyes hidden behind a mask. And so why even open her helmet to begin with? Like, it's very strange. It's like J.J. Abrams was working against himself, like giving himself the middle finger. Like, he's doing all this work to do things and yet subverting his own stuff, like negating his own things. You know, it's not like he was trying to subvert stuff from the fans. Like, it wasn't like Rian Johnson trying to like show you that he could subvert what you thought was Star Wars. This was like J.J. Abrams like setting stuff up for himself with some deliberation and then deconstructing his own stuff that he set up and negating its effect. It's like you wonder, is he incompetent? A lot of people say they think he's a fraud. A lot of other YouTubers say that he's just like a hanger-oner of Steven Spielberg, going as far to say that he's just a glorified babysitter of Spielberg's. I don't know about all that, but that he's basically a fraud. And this kind of does make the point. I mean, I've enjoyed other films by J.J. Abrams, films that weren't the best in the world, but I enjoyed them a lot. Like Star Trek, the 2009 film. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, it subverts and it's a little bit off as far as the Star Trek being in Star Trek canon, and it's in an alternate timeline and all that. But I've seen it multiple times. I must have seen it 6 times shortly after it came out. You know, it was released on video and whatnot. I really enjoyed it. But this is just like you wonder if the director's incompetent, and it's the same director. It really is. So I don't know. I'm just shaking my head, just wondering if he's trying to prove all his critics on YouTube right, that he's incompetent or that he's a fraud. 1 star, August 2, 2020. This movie couldn't be any more of a confusing mess if it tried. What the fuck happened here? Yeah, at the end of it, I was left wondering what the fuck happened. Like, what did I just watch? Because it's like I watched a whole lot of very expensive nothing. 0.5 star. Worst movie I have ever seen, with a lot of cliche and useless special effects. No sense in all the movie and the new saga. Yeah, this one is just there's nothing going on here. There's just like a whole lot of what was the point of all this? 3 stars, July 31, 2020. This final Star Wars episode has a heavy load, wrapping the whole saga up in feature length, and unfortunately packs too much in to make this a thoroughly enjoyable sci-fi adventure. However, along its convoluted way, there are lots of sets of breathtaking visual appeal. You know, I'm going to again say what I said before, that I saw a whole lot of expensive stuff happening, but I wouldn't say any of it was breathtaking. The way it was filmed, the camera angles, the rushedness of it, there was no time to take anything in. It didn't feel dramatic in scope. It just felt expensive. It didn't feel awe-inspiring. It didn't feel like I was seeing something in a way I hadn't seen it before. It didn't say there was no part of this movie where I said, oh wow, that's impressive. No, I mean, the only thing I could think of was, well, wow, this looks very expensive and shiny and crisp. And it felt more like, it wasn't believable, because all of this expense, it felt more like that ride at Disney World that I've seen videos on called Rise of the Resistance. It felt very scripted and phony like that. Like, for example, it's in my notes somewhere buried in there. There's a part where Finn and Poe and Chewbacca are together storming aboard Kylo Ren's ship, and they run down these corridors and just run and gun like out of a sequence of a video game. They run and gun and just defeat stormtrooper after stormtrooper after stormtrooper after, in rapid succession. The pace is frantic, and it feels like something that would be in a Rise of the Resistance ride at Disney World, like some kind of ride that was on rails, and you sit in a traveling contraption and it speeds you along, and things happen that are like a combination of video screens and animatronics. And it felt like that. Large sections of this movie felt like an animatronic ride. It didn't feel real. It had no believability. It felt very expensive, very crisp, clean, flashy, everything flawless as far as the production of it, as far as the visual flair, but nothing awe-inspiring, nothing emotionally impactful, just like a very sterile amusement park ride. That's what it felt like. And I have that in my notes. It felt like a Disney ride of some kind more than an actual film, like where you could see the script more than the story. Like it's like you're reading the script, but it doesn't feel real. This doesn't feel like a real event happening. 3 stars. I read that one. Okay. 0.5 star. It's like the people doing this movie had no knowledge of the Star Wars saga. The only reason to see this mess is to learn how to not ruin a beloved and loved story. It's almost as if the creator knew that they were doing when they destroyed everything I loved with this horrible mess. Yeah, it's like, I think this is just like, I don't think this movie was made to try to destroy Star Wars. I think that's actually The Last Jedi was made to do that. This was made just to get Disney out of this mess. I think at the beginning of this, maybe they thought that they could try to please some majority of the fans. They knew they wouldn't please them all, but they tried to please the majority, and that's where they got bogged down into the stories about all the endless reshoots and whatnot. Um, I think at some point they just said, you know what, let's just cut this thing together to get people in there and get it in the theaters and just get this behind us as quickly as possible. And that's what it feels like. What can we do to just get this serviceable enough to get this mess behind us? Because at some point they had given up trying to actually please anybody. They figured, well, we can please 20% of them by doing this. We can please 25% of them by doing this other thing, but piss off the other 80%. So let's just like put out something so bland and blah that like nobody can get angry, but nobody's really going to have anything at the end of this. It's just kind of like, let's just put something out there that's some kind of bland flavor that people will forget about next week, but we have to put something out and we'll at least get some of our investment back. That's what it felt like. Just like they just wanted out of this thing. And that's why I have a hard time believing there's going to be any new trilogy. There's going to be any new thing. I don't think so. I think you're going to see an endless amount of different weird experiments at bringing Disney Plus type shows to streaming. But I don't think you're going to see any new trilogy because who's going to sign up for something that all this money went into it and it failed and it ended up with a product that was just an attempt to get out of this whole thing? I mean, would you go into this as a director thinking, well, wow, I could do a good job. I'll try it. I'll sign up for the next Disney trilogy. I don't think so. I don't think so. I just have a hard time believing that, particularly with what's happened to Disney's finances since the COVID-19, that they're going to try to risk another Star Wars trilogy. I don't believe it. I think it's nonsense. I think the most we're going to see is just Disney Plus type shows and spin-offs, and if they don't work, they can just move on to something else and people will forget about it after a while. Maybe Star Wars, like I said, needs to go dormant for about 15 years before somebody tries to actually bring it back on the big screen, assuming there are movie theaters at that point, which I'm not sure there will be like there are today. But let's continue. 2 stars, July 31, 2020. Huge fan of Star Wars. This film was real bad, close to garbage. The story, the script, the lines, what were they thinking? Level of hope has become childish and a joke. Characters were still absolute shit. Hate, no, despise what Disney has done to the franchise. The old era needs to return and fix what this has become. Glory to the Empire. Again, going along with this review, I have to say, if you watch the original Star Wars films, even Return of the Jedi, they feel like real things happening. They feel like real events with real consequences, with real emotions involved. The Disney stuff feels like an empty shell, like a whole lot of, like a Disney park ride. People would have said before, well, it feels like a video game, but no, video games are better. Video games, you actually have cinematic quality stories. Video games, you actually have emotions coming out of it. Video games have improved a lot since, the days of them just being platform shooters. They are very cinematic in scope. This feels like it's just like a ride on rails at Disneyland or Disney World. That's more appropriate for this, I think. 1.5 stars, July 29, 2020. I'd rate this higher if it weren't part of a trilogy, let alone Star Wars. I don't expect every movie to be internally consistent, but this movie ignores The Last Jedi and the original trilogy. It ignores itself half the time too. Yes, it ignores itself. It puts deliberate care into setting things up and then ignores the very things it set up. Like I said, it's like the director was trying to prove he was useless because that's what it felt like. But let's go on. Inserting something that happens with zero payoff later. Let's add another thing and never develop the ones we have. Oh, and Palpatine returned because JJ cares more about spectacle than substance. I'm sad that we never got a sequel to The Last Jedi. I had fun because I'm able to look past failure. Well, yeah, if you went to see this in the theater, maybe you had fun just as an event. It could have been a good night for you despite this movie. Like I said, this film, it doesn't offend. It's designed to just be a product, to be just a ride. And rides don't usually offend people, right? So it's not like The Last Jedi where people walked out pissed off. This is just like you got on a ride, you bought your ticket, The ride's over, you walk away, and you move on to the next ride. It's really not important at all. It's a whole lot of nothing. 1 star. The story of this movie is just extremely stupid and ridiculous, a real disgrace to the original trilogy. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's connected to the original trilogy at all. It's just like a whole lot of visual spectacle, no emotional connection to the original trilogy. It all feels hollow, fake. 1.5 stars. This makes the prequels seem like the best saga ever. Well, I'm still going to say the prequels are trash. I don't know why I keep seeing the argument that, well, if you don't like the Disney trilogy, then you like the prequels and vice versa. This is ridiculous. I never liked the prequels. I think the prequels are an example of one man, George Lucas, unable to step up to the plate. His ego was too big. He didn't realize he's not all that. He needs a lot of help, and he did in the original trilogy, and yet he did it his way with the prequels, and they were a disaster, and they don't hold up. They never did. They're cringeworthy. However, they don't insult the fans. They just they come off as ridiculous and boring and silly and childlike, and they come off as something that could have been done better if George Lucas had asked other people's advice. However, they didn't offend anybody. They didn't give people the middle finger. The Disney ones are just. But anyway, 1 star. What a travesty, an incoherent and unintelligent mess. Yeah, it's moving so quickly. You don't even have you. It's such a mess that you see what it's a mess despite the speed of it, and yet at the end, when you really have time to reflect for more than 10 seconds on it, you're like, wow, half of this stuff doesn't make any sense. 1.5 stars, July 26th. Disney must have paid to have positive reviews put on this site. You can make videos longer than the movie itself simply talking about the gigantic plot holes, awkward pacing, and terrible writing. It doesn't even maintain continuity with its own previous 2 movies. Only reason it got the extra half star was because of the visual effect. Yeah, but the visual effects look fantastic, but they don't have any wow factor. It's like a ride. It's just like a ride. They have no impact. Like I said, they're clean, crisp, colorful. The sound is fantastic. And that's the thing I want to say too. The soundtrack, it sounds like Star Wars, but it feels like Star Wars, but there's no real heart in it. The Star Wars, the score of this film feels like, yes, it's Star Wars, but it's like somebody wasn't trying very hard. They just kind of went along and made it sound like Star Wars, but there was no feel to it, no emotion to it. It's like the visuals, they're there and they're competent, but they just have no emotional weight to them. They feel very hollow, like a ride that's should have been over in 5 minutes, but it went on for 2 hours and 30 or more. Half a star. Complete crap. Storyline was terrible. On a Star Wars bright side, I love The Mandalorian. Can't speak to The Mandalorian because I haven't seen it. I won't subscribe to Disney Plus. And I have the feeling that The Mandalorian, if it was fantastic, it won't be for long, because how long does something go on before, if it is successful, here come the people with the agendas, the political agendas, and they're not going to forget about The Mandalorian. Come on now. We know that's not going to happen. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked. 3 stars. Not that bad of a Star Wars movie. Yes, it has plot holes. Yes, it has issues. But overall, not only did I have fun time with this film, but I found myself relatively satisfied with how J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio ended this saga. Well, it didn't piss you off, so I guess you can say it succeeded in not pissing you off. That's the way I feel about it. 3 stars. Certainly that's what the reviews overall say. Somehow they say 86%. That would be 3 stars. Or higher, unfortunately. Half a star, July 25th. Of all the movies I've ever seen in my life, this is one of the worst. It's just so bad. Words cannot describe. I disagree. Words can describe. And as to long YouTube videos picking it apart, yeah, people have put hours and hours into it with words to tell you how bad it is, so I disagree on that. 86% viewer score clearly does not include any bad reviews. This is top 10 worst movies that made any money. Straight garbage. I feel bad for every actor in this mistake. Top 10 worst movies that made any money. Mm, I don't know about that. There's a lot of smaller budget movies that are terrible that made a shitload of money. So no, it's hyperbole. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It's hard. It's hard to understand where the 86% viewer score is coming from. I just don't know. I have no idea. I didn't like months ago, and I don't now. I certainly don't now because I've seen the whole thing in its entirety for myself. I don't know. I cannot explain it. Let's go on with another page. Let's see what we have. 2.5 stars. It's been said that J.J. Abrams makes movies for the shareholders. If that's the case, welcome to the board meeting to end all board meetings. No one ever said that pleasing everyone would be easy, but with the Rise of Skywalker, the director pretty much nails it. That is to say, this film, much ballyhooed as the final chapter in the 9-part, 42-year running Skywalker saga, is, aside from everything else in the kitchen sink, an entirely, deliberately, innocuously agreeable film. Yeah, just like an amusement park ride. It won't offend you, it won't hurt you, but it's overall positive enough to keep people buying tickets. Like, again, I don't think this was a real moneymaker, but I think, yeah, on paper, this returned a profit to Disney, but, was it really profitable? Nah, I don't think so. I think maybe this is more like a break-even thing, even financially. Doesn't seem right to me that this would be considered profitable. Um, Everything but the kitchen sink. Nah, there's not that much stuff in it. It's just like so fast paced and so rushed. Not everything but the kitchen sink. There's very little actual substance in it. It's just bombarding you so quickly. Let's go back to my list. Chronologically, I'm going to go through quite a bit of this. Rey is wearing the same outfit as from the other two films. Why? Yeah, you know, the first two films, uh, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, they take place back to back, literally like minutes apart. Okay, she can be wearing the same thing, but this one, it's been a while. How much of a while, I don't know. I didn't get the sense of an exact amount of time from my one viewing of it, and I'm not going to watch it twice. But she's wearing the exact same outfit she was in the last two films, so yeah, it doesn't make sense to me on a lot of levels because film-wise it doesn't make sense. But number two, you want to sell action figures and stuff, so the time periods between films are a perfect opportunity to introduce new costumes, to sell new action figures, and etc. So why would you want her in the same outfit? That doesn't make sense to me. Like, even from a merchandising point of view, it makes no sense to have her in the same outfit. Because what motivates a kid, assuming they wanted to buy a toy of her, to buy the same one with the same outfit as before? Why wouldn't they want to see her in a new outfit? I mean, look what Lucas did with the original trilogy. At the opening of Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker was not dressed as he was as the farm boy on Tatooine in the first movie. It was completely the opposite, night and day, for artistic effect, for thematic effect, and to sell, literally to sell more action figures and toys with those new outfits. That's a fact. Luke Skywalker showed up at Return of the Jedi, opening scene he showed up, he's dressed in black. That was his thing. His hair was different. He looked like a different person, a transformed person that time had gone by. He did not look like the same, sheepdog-haired farm boy wearing the white outfit on a desert planet. It was a complete transformation. And like I said, financially, it just makes sense just to sell the toys, aside from, the themes that you want to change. I don't understand why Rey is wearing the same outfit. It doesn't make sense. Next on my list, yeah, why does Palpatine give everybody in the galaxy 16 hours notice before he launches his attack? There's no military reason for that. This makes no sense. And why 16 hours? We never get Palpatine's message. The opening credits just say, the dead speak. And, it just gives us the plot summary where it says, Palpatine has sent a message across the galaxy, telling everybody he's still alive. And so presumably in that message, he's giving everybody 16 hours before he attacks. What? And I believe there's conversation between Kylo Ren, where Palpatine tells him directly that in 16 hours his fleet will attack. Why? If he's going to tell Kylo Ren this, why doesn't he tell him the reason? Oh, in 16 hours, because then my ships will be charged up, or whatever it is, whatever the reason, because these stars are in alignment, or whatever damn stupid reason, I'm going to attack in 16 hours. But no, it's just like everybody just gets the information. 16 hours, Palpatine attacks, so you have 16 hours to try to stop him. So I guess this just sets up a ticking clock mechanism in the plot. I can't think of another reason for this. And why 16 hours? Like, what's special about 16 hours? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Um, 20 minutes in, yeah, this was my pacing one. 18 minutes in, and there's so much stuff going on that if this wasn't a Star Wars movie that I wanted to do a review on, if this were something on Netflix I just came across and it wasn't Star Wars, I would have just shut the damn thing off because I'm like, whoa, this is too much stuff going on. I don't care about any of it. Why is Rey and Leia? Okay, yeah, why? The only scenes with Leia are showing her training Rey and them having a farewell hug, goodbye, tearful hug, and Leia telling Rey, giving her a motivational thing, hugging her, crying, saying goodbye. Why is Rey and why? How are Rey and Leia an emotional thing? Like they act like they're mother and daughter, and they've known each other for years, and they've gone through trials and travails together, and they have this emotional bond where they're crying over each other. What? This wasn't in the last two movies. Like they barely interacted with each other. And if they did have something going on between, say, The Last Jedi and this film, there's no hint of it anywhere. Maybe that was footage that was cut out during all the reshoots. I mean, what travails did they face together that gave them some incredible emotional bond? Like they hardly knew each other. It doesn't make sense. Um, yeah, stormtroopers calling the Knights of Ren cool. That doesn't. It's really distracting. That kind of stuff pulls you out of any ability to like get into the film. Um, yeah, why does Kylo Ren go through the trouble, and it shows us him painstakingly going through the trouble of re-welding together, reassembling his broken mask and putting it on. And there's dialogue in the film wasted from different characters, including generals on his ship, commenting about how they like what he's done with his mask. What significance does this have to anything? It's not symbolic of anything. It's not, it doesn't produce anything in the story. It's just a weird side thing that has nothing to do with anything. It's almost like wasted footage. Like, what is this significant for? Like, what is him reassembling his mask? Like, what does this mean to them? What does it mean to him, and what should it mean to us? I don't get any sense of that from watching anything that happened in this film. Why is it even in there? And not only that, but if I had broken my mask or some other piece of equipment, why would I go back and reassemble it using all this time and effort to reassemble it, and it looks like shit when I put it back together? Because his mask, Kylo Ren's mask, is obviously pieced back together. It looks like something that was broken and pieced back together. Why doesn't he just have a new one made? Like, get a replacement. Obviously somebody made the first one, whether it was somebody contracted to do so or replicated in a machine, or he made it himself, handcrafted it. Why didn't he just make a new one, a better one, or the same one? Why did he have to piece the broken one back together and wear a broken one? It means nothing. So again, makes no sense. I wrote it down. These are things that I paused the film for, and I wrote them down. How did Kylo Ren and Rey have an encounter where they're fighting each other and arguing with each other through some kind of force projection where they're in distant parts of the galaxy or their star systems apart, but they're able to like fight each other with lightsabers. And one of them seeing the background, his background, like Kylo Ren is seeing his surroundings and she's in there fighting him. But from her point of view, she's seeing her surroundings and he's there fighting with her. Okay, fine. But then he snatches the necklace off her neck and then uses that necklace to have it analyzed to find out where she is. If that's a force power, they've introduced this as like you can somehow reach through some invisible portal and snatch something off somebody else across the galaxy. this introduces a lot of problems into Star Wars, going back into the original movies, and just leaves you. It's so much of a distraction. Like it's just one more like monkey wrench thrown into your brain while you're trying to get into something, and it's just a distraction, and it's ridiculous. Um, yeah, Lando magically. Yeah, Lando Calrissian shows up and he shoots a stormtrooper in the eye with a little mini crossbow, and it fires little mini crossbow bolts or arrows, whatever you want to call them. They look like about the size of a pencil, and it's ridiculous because stormtroopers wear this armor, and in the lore of Star Wars, it's supposed to actually function as armor. That's why you wear this crap. That's actually plastic, right? The costumes are plastic, but it's armor. But yet, when Lando Calrissian fires this little pencil-sized crossbow bolt through the stormtrooper's helmet into his eye, it kind of like proves that they're just plastic costumes. Um, Again, it throws you out of any believability in the story. It works against believability in the story. It's almost like a joke. It's like, again, like J.J. Abrams is trying to do things deliberately to prove he's incompetent. Like, it makes no sense to me on any level. It's bizarre. I had to write it down. Um, how do Rey and her friends, how do Rey, Poe, and Finn just immediately recognize Lando Calrissian? I already mentioned this. It doesn't make any sense. Not believable. I mean, even if they had seen him before, even if they had met him before 40 years ago, to just recognize him instantly, he's changed a lot. If you want to go and compare what he looks like in this to what he looked like in The Empire Strikes Back, it might take me a minute to recognize him. But yet they just instantly, like instantaneously on seeing him on a strange desert planet, Lando Calrissian. Instantly they recognize him. It doesn't make sense. Um, let's see. Oh yes. Um, Hiding a whole planet and having these magical wayfinders is the only way to find it. I already went over this before, that it's not feasible. You could hide a whole planet like that beyond maybe one or two times that somebody got there and was tracked going there, right? Um, Not only that, but why would you, if you wanted to hide a planet, why would you put the keys to finding it in weird locations that people could find? Like, you're not really hiding it, are you? Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, this is like the logic of a 6-year-old trying to set up an Easter egg hunt or something. It's just like meaningless crap. It's again like J.J. Abrams is trying to make fun of his own incompetence. Again, there are rocket troopers, and apparently there have been rocket pack troopers, stormtroopers with rocket packs on their back, like going back, I guess, long ago in Star Wars. I mean, these weren't in previous Star Wars movies. They might have been in one of the prequels. There might have been an image of it in the prequels, but there have been videos on this. The characters act like they've never seen this before. Like, they have this stupid scene where it's supposed to be funny, where they repeat the line, "They fly now, they fly now, they fly now." This has been gone over before in a lot of other people's videos, but when I saw it for myself, I'm just thinking, there's nothing revolutionary about the rocket packs to begin with. And then the whole chase scene with the rocket troopers and the they're like they're not really speeder bikes. They're like treaded vehicles, like almost like you would see a snowmobile, but it's designed for the desert. They're like desert sand snowmobiles, basically. And yes, it's all competently shot and it looks fine and it looks real pretty much, but there's nothing awe-inspiring about it. There's nothing of a spectacle about it. It feels, again, just like something out of an amusement park ride. It's not believable. It's just the way it's shot. It just has no gravitas to it. It has no weight to it. But it's very expensive, obviously. Let's see, rocket troopers. It's like they're not a new thing in Star Wars lore, but in this movie, no one's ever thought of it before. Okay. Yes, let's see. The group magically crashes into the quicksand that just happens to take them into the cave that happens to have the magic dagger they were looking for. Went over that one already. Rey has, like, magically, she can somehow just lay hands on people and heal them, and on creatures, and now she has healing abilities. She can do lay on hands, basically, and yeah, that's just a thing out of nowhere, and she just has it. It's one more of her godlike powers. And speaking of godlike powers, next thing on the list, she has such power that she's able to reach out her hand and stop a transport ship taking off with multiple engines going at full throttle. She reaches out and could just pull it back to the ground and simultaneously shoot force lightning into it and obliterate it. So she's, again, godlike powers that she never chooses to use at any other time. Like, why didn't she use these type of powers when she was engaging in fights on the ground with various enemies? Like, we wouldn't have even have had to have those fights and chases. She could have just stretched out her hand and vaporized all the enemies in front of her. But she chooses never to do this because, the movie, it can't have that happen, It only has to have it when it looks cool, but not really when it'll derail the plot. So, selectively used godlike powers, with no attempt to explain why she just chooses not to use them at times. And in fact, when she does use these godlike powers, it's shown that they're basically just accidents when they happen, making her even more of a undisciplined, unsympathetic character for a lot of people. Let's see. 3PO, yeah, when 3PO's memory is erased or it's about to be erased, he says he's taking one last look at his friends, and yet the entire movie, the entirety of this movie previously had just shown Finn and Poe and everybody just treating him like shit. Like, they weren't treating him like a friend. They were treating him like, you shut up and do as you're told, you bucket of bolts, basically. And then all of a sudden he's acting like they're his best friends and he's going to miss them. Makes no sense. Yeah, I mentioned this before. Zori, the character of Zori Bliss, I guess is her full name. She's only seen from her eyes, so what's the point of her? Like, she contributes nothing to the plot. She gives, it's weird. There's a scene in which she ends up giving Poe, there's wasted time of her giving Poe this captain's medallion that supposedly will grant whoever has it free passage and docking rights to any ship, any first order ship. Okay, fine, but it's never used. It's never used in the film, so why is it there? Like, it's something put in there deliberately. With deliberate care, it's been put in there. Running time's been spent on it. But it's never again used in the film. What was the point of it? Aside from the fact that Zori Bliss, again, she's just eyes inside a helmet, and the eyes aren't even expressive, so what's the point of all this? She's basically reduced, the actress has been basically reduced to a voice actor. But why? Like, why is she even in there? Don't know. Yeah, when our heroes storm aboard or they fly a transport onto Kylo Ren's ship into the docking bay, and they're immediately, of course, approached by a group of stormtroopers that demand to see their authentication codes or their identification. I mean, it's surprising they would even get that far. They should have been fired upon before they even got to land in there. But for some reason, the movie says, okay, you land in there, and then somehow they don't question you until after you've landed. Fine. But then they just blast them right off. They just waste like 6 or so stormtroopers, kill them right out in the open in front of the entire landing bay, which is massive, and then just trot away. And no alarms go off, and nobody tries to stop them. And wow. I mean, can you imagine? Why don't you just hey, I've got an idea. Next time you see a U.S. aircraft carrier in port somewhere, just take your speedboat, speed up to the side of it, try to climb on board somewhere on one of the sides of it where there's an opened area, scale onto there, and when somebody tries to stop you, shoot them dead. And then how far do you think you're going to get before any alarms are sounded? Or you'll just start running through the decks and nothing's going to happen, and you'll make it to the other side of the ship before even the slightest alarm goes off or anybody notices anything weird happen. That's not going to be happening. But in this film, this stuff just happens like no big deal. It's completely incompetent. Let's see. Stormtrooper says, well, yeah, this was really bad. I thought it was one of the worst. Rey encounters stormtroopers in the corridor along with our heroes, and she uses her mind powers on them and to convince them that they're supposed to be there. It's okay that they're there. She waves her hand, Obi-Wan Kenobi style. And then the stormtroopers, they say they say another line, but then they finish it with "Welcome, guys." One stormtrooper says, "It's okay that you're here," and then his sidekick says, "Welcome, guys." Welcome, guys. Like, this is as bad, probably worse, as saying "cool." Like, it's another modern expression put in that just like at this point, there was no chance I would be like sucked into the film. There's so many problems, but what is this stuff, It's just another weird modern vernacular thrown in that's just a joke, but it's not funny. It's just stupid. Um, let's see. Most quippy dialogue humor falls flat. Yeah, I mentioned this. A lot of the dialogue, I didn't understand the purpose of it. It felt like filler or somebody was wasting time. But it wasn't. It was just attempts at Marvel type humor that fell so flat that they went over my head and presumably a lot of other people's. And it took me a while to realize this was failed attempts at humor. But it just comes across as dialogue that's just a wasted dialogue that could have been much better used to either characterize the characters, move the plot forward, or reveal something. But nope, it's just wasted dialogue because of the bad humor. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, Poe, Finn, and Chewie, they get onto Kylo Ren's ship, and it just becomes an on-the-rails Disney park ride. And I mentioned this before, making the whole film feel like this eventually. Yeah, Vader's mask. It seems like it was put into the movie just to be part of the trailer, to be part of the marketing leading up to the movie. I would say it was effective at that. And I think that's the only reason it was put in the film, because it has no significance in the film. Like, it's just a meaningless prop in the film. You're never shown why it's important to Kylo Ren. You're never shown why he somehow salvaged it from Starkiller Base, carried it with him, put it on display in his new quarters. There's just no reason for it to be there. It's meaningless, no symbolic value. It's a callback to Darth Vader, but a meaningless callback to the audience because it's meaningless to Kylo Ren. We're never shown why it's important. And again, I maintain it. It's just put in there so that it could be in the trailer as part of the film's marketing. Let's see, Hux dialogue being childlike. Yeah, it was. Hux was just summarily blasted away, almost comically, after he revealed himself to be the spy, and then had, I believe it was Finn or Poe, shoot him. I think it was Finn who shot him in the leg. He wanted Finn to shoot him in the arm so that, his superior officers would think that they had escaped from him and he wasn't the spy. But Finn chose to subvert his expectations and shoot him in the leg. But despite having his leg bandaged up with this bloody bandage, it didn't work on his superior officer. He was summarily shot as soon as he said that they had overpowered him. It was almost done as a joke. But his dialogue, Hux's dialogue, where he says, "I am the spy," and then he says, "I don't care if you win, I need Kylo Ren to lose." That was so lame. So goddamn lame. Childlike, out of a children's cartoon. Every time some major plot point happens, another thing interrupts to move the story to the next stage. Yeah, it's frantic. Everything is stacked and overlapped on top of everything else. You never have a time to catch your breath. I went over that. Dagger pointing to the location on the Death Star wreckage is ridiculously stupid. Yeah. It's all designed so that you hold the dagger up to the Death Star wreckage, and the teeth on the dagger point you to, when you line the teeth up with the wreckage, there's a little pointy piece that pops out that points right to where the Sith holocron is, and nothing about that makes any sense. That's so ridiculous. It's like, I can't even put it to words how ridiculous it is. When I saw that, I've heard about this before. I've seen it in other people's reviews, but when I saw it for myself, I'm just like, who would do this? J.J. Abrams is clearly not a 6-year-old, but it's like he's trying to show us that he is. I don't get it. It's very bizarre. Yeah, J.J. forgets that Rey can fly. She's scaling the wreckage of the Death Star, huffing and puffing, doing it as though it's dangerous. If she screws up, she'll fall to her death, like I would. But it's not believable. It doesn't feel like anything because she can already fly. So it's like somebody that's just going up the stairs for exercise when they could have just rode the elevator. You know, there's a 30-story tall building, and instead of just riding the elevator up to the top to do business, I decide to go up the stairs. And if you watch me doing this and huffing and puffing, you're just going to be like, wow, you're an idiot. And so you have to conclude Rey's an idiot, because why would you huff and puff and climb this wreckage in the Death Star when you can just float your way up there like Superman? Why would you even ride a skiff across the ocean waves, you know, up these dangerous, tall, stormy ocean waves to this Death Star wreckage out in the water, if you could just float your way over there like Superman and not have to worry about it? Um, it's not really because Rey is stupid, right? It's because J.J. Abrams thought this would be cool. It would look cool to have the skiff going across the water. It would look cool to have her scaling the Death Star wreckage. That's the only reason. And so it could be in the trailer too, and it would look cool in the trailer. That's it. Um, Stuff in this movie is just thrown in there to make the trailer look cool, and because J.J. Abrams thought it would look cool, and I guess it would inflate the special effects budget, which it would have. That's it. That's all I can conclude, because Rey's not really shown as stupid, right? I mean, if she's capable of doing something the easy way, she would have. That's, for all her faults, right? She's not dumb like that. So, yeah, it's just J.J. Abrams' marketing budget was more important than the actual film. Did it pan out? Again, I'll say I highly doubt this film was profitable. I highly doubt it. Soundtrack is generic feeling, even in battle, no passion. Yeah, it sounds like Star Wars, but no passion. It's like somebody just going through the motions. Forgettable. Um, yeah, Finn keeps screaming Rey. Like, it's like his most important moments are just running up and screaming, Rey, Rey, Rey. Like, this would be comedic, I guess, if other things were comedic. Like, it could work as comedy in certain situations, but it's not funny. It's just dumb, and you're wondering, why does he just keep wasting a lot of his screen time screaming Rey? Like, for what purpose? Like, don't get it. Um, yeah, here's the thing. Kylo Ren and Rey meet up on in the Emperor's throne room, an area of the Emperor's throne room on the Death Star wreckage that's somehow still intact. But let's not talk about the ridiculousness of the Death Star throne room being intact. Let's talk about how Rey steals Kylo Ren's, after they have a battle where Rey defeats him yet again. Rey steals his TIE fighter, which has, it's a TIE fighter model that has, unlike most TIE fighters in Star Wars, it has interstellar or warp drive or lightspeed drive. She steals it and takes off back to Ahch-To, or back to the water world where, Luke's Jedi Temple was. And, okay, so she took off with his TIE fighter. How did he get off the Death Star? Like, the film doesn't really explain that. I guess J.J. Abrams just expects our mind to fill in, well, maybe somehow he used something to communicate with his forces and they came and picked him up or something. But really, it just shows him being left there, and suddenly he got out of there with his ship being gone. So was there another ship in the wreckage of the Death Star? Or more than likely, JJ just wanted us to fill in missing parts because he was too lazy to put in the parts himself. Let's see. How does Leia die exactly? Well, she just faded away like Luke Skywalker. The physicality of it, that's what happened. But she was shown like delivering a mental message to her son, Kylo. That distracted him during his battle with Rey, presumably allowing Rey to defeat him yet again. But it was just like her saying Ben or something to him, like no real effort. I mean, yeah, she communicated to him across interstellar space, and presumably this was enough where she just faded away like Luke Skywalker, like she just faded into nothing, and her clothes collapsed. Doing the same thing Luke Skywalker did by projecting himself. He used too much energy in The Last Jedi, and he just faded away. Really stupid. I guess it was the only thing J.J. Abrams could think of. Rose Tico was kind of exiled as a bit character, and she was made even more ugly. Like, I think this was meant as some kind of joke or jab at Rian Johnson by J.J. Abrams. Like, he deliberately, there's no question, Rose Tico's character was deliberately made uglier in this. The makeup, the clothes, definitely she was made uglier. No question. It wasn't an accident. Now, there was a lot of online criticism out there about Rose Tico's character, about, her appearance. And so it's like J.J. Abrams, like, he said, oh, you thought Brian Johnson made her ugly? Watch what I do to her. And yeah, I was like, wow, she looks horrific. And he reduced her to a bit character that has only a few lines and has no relationship with Finn anymore. It's like they act with each other as though they never even had anything going on, and Rose acts like she never was in love with him, and it's like it never happened. And she's very much uglier. Don't know. It's in my notes. Yeah, here's a nitpick. When Luke Skywalker's Force Ghost raises his old X-Wing out of the water, out next to the island where the Jedi Temple is, to give to Rey so she can rejoin her friends, there's so much water pouring out of it continuously. It's not realistic. It's a nitpick, but it's just bad. Like, out of all the stuff in the movie that's visually fine and not problematic, this thing, this TIE or this X-Wing is just hovering in the air, very boring, hovering in the air, being lifted by the Force. Nothing cool looking about it, except that it's got seawater pouring out of it forever. Like, it's not just seawater that was in there pouring out of it. It's like, and then it tapers off like normal objects do when they're raised out of the water. The water pours out of the crevices and then slowly tapers off to a trickle until it's just a few drops, right? Because it runs out of water coming out. This thing just kept pouring water and pouring water and pouring water and pouring water. I'm like, what? I don't know if that was supposed to be a joke, or I don't know. It's deliberate. I don't know how that wouldn't be noticeable to anybody watching a rough cut of those effects. So nitpick though, it's this film's not. If this were the only problem in this film, it wouldn't be worth mentioning, but it is obviously there. Ghost, yeah. Where did thousands of crew, where did the thousands, tens of thousands of crew come from that would need to be there to pilot, to operate Palpatine's final order, his thousands of Star Destroyers? Where did the crew come from? He's on, like I said, he's on a hidden Sith world. Where did he recruit all these people from? Wouldn't word get out that people were being recruited? Were they a clone army? If they were, there was no mention of it. It's just like left up to magic or our imagination how tens and tens of thousands of trained personnel were there to run all his equipment. Just like it's magic, like how he even built all that stuff. Like, where are the facilities used to construct these gigantic ships? They just rise up out of the ice and they're just like floating there. Who built them? Who crewed them? What fuels them? What are the economics of this? All just don't worry about it, because JJ thought that it looks cool. It looks cool in the marketing, so don't worry about it. Why is Palpatine? Yeah, Palpatine is shown to have like godlike powers, similar to, equal, or greater than Rey's. How he has them, I don't know, because he looks physically a wreck, like he's barely alive. But he's got these godlike powers, and yet somehow, with all these resources to build this thousand ship, armada with tens of thousands of crew, and he's got godlike powers. How come he's living in this decrepit tomb-like area and hanging on the end of a crane arm? And it looks like he's barely got the resources to survive, but he's got all this other stuff going on. This doesn't make any damn sense. Let's move on to page 2.5. Finn says, I feel it about the location of the nav beacon. Yeah, Okay, there's a navigational beacon I already mentioned, a stupid navigational beacon that's somehow needed for all these Star Destroyers to be able to lift off from the planet. Without this navigational beacon, they just can't navigate out of there. Okay, that's destroyed by the good guys, because obviously they'll target that. So then the navigational beacon has now been switched over to some beacon that's inside one of the Star Destroyers. Okay, which one is it in? Nobody would know. So they get around this by Finn having a premonition, just a thought in his mind that it's that one. It's that one. And when he's asked how does he know, by one of the new characters, his new black girlfriend character. I don't know if she's his girlfriend or she's just a sidekick to him, but she's like a new character. She says, "Well, how do you know?" And he says, "I just feel it," or "Yeah, I feel it." And it's just a way to hand wave around like how they would know where the navigational beacon switched to. So somehow Finn has some magical mind force where he knows where the beacon is, and they all just listen to that, and now they know which Star Destroyer to target. Do I have to say why would they even listen to him? Because he had a feeling. Oh boy. Then you've got the riding horses on the Star Destroyer deck. Why didn't the ship just tilt them off? Yeah, I've heard other YouTubers say this too, and I was thinking the same thing, like, okay, let's say the Star Destroyers, they're low enough in the atmosphere of this planet where there's atmosphere around the Star Destroyers. So instead of using like speeders or some mechanical things to exit their landing craft on the surface of this Star Destroyer, they use horses, some type of horse. It's like a horse with some kind of very easy to do costume thrown over the horse. It's like a horse, a science fiction horse, like a weird mutant breed of horse. So it's just a horse with some kind of tassels thrown over it to be weird hair or something. So the horses are riding on the Star Destroyer deck towards like where the navigational beacon is, or their target. Why don't, there's gravity obviously because they're right side up and people are riding horses across the deck. Why don't they just like tilt the Star Destroyer to tilt them off? Like, bloop, you're gone. Like, easy solution, but nope, nobody thinks of that. Okay. Who is the Sith audience that is waiting for Rey and is also there when Kylo Ren is visiting Palpatine in his weird lair? There's this like auditorium of shadowy figures that I guess are Sith. Like, you can't tell because they're so far away and kind of blurry and dark, but there's like maybe 10,000 of them, 20,000 of them, like a stadium full of them, like spectators that are just there to spectate something. I don't know what they're spectating because all it is Palpatine on the end of an arm, and before anybody is there to talk to him, like he's just there on the end of an arm in a lot of empty space, and Kylo Ren comes to visit him in the opening scene of the movie. And there's already this auditorium worth of people there just spectating him from a distance. And what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Who are these people? Are they people? Are they Sith? Are they clones of Palpatine? Or what is going on with this? It's a lot of stuff that looks like it was just, again, thrown in there for marketing, like to be in the trailer, because JJ thought it would look cool. It's nonsensical. Yeah, Finn's girlfriend shooting down ships with a bow and arrow. Yeah, Finn's girlfriend, if she's his girlfriend, it doesn't really show you enough to know it's just a sidekick or a girlfriend. I don't know. She's, in the combat on the deck of this Star Destroyer. They're riding these horses, and she's like shooting, and they're shooting with different weapons at the TIE fighters flying overhead and whatnot. And she's shooting at them and taking them down with a bow and arrow. Now, I don't know what kind of bow and arrow is going to penetrate like a TIE fighter, or do we see people using bows and arrows against like, I don't know, F-15s? Do they take down F-15s? Do arrows take them down? But this movie has it. It's like it's childlike in that way. Then there's something introduced called the dyad in the Force, where Palpatine just kind of off the cuff explains that because Kylo Ren and Rey have teamed up to fight him, that they're now a dyad, and I'm not sure what this means. I don't know if this is in the electrical sense or it's some spiritual thing, or I don't know. It's not explained. Does this mean they're twins? Does this mean I don't know what it means really. Nobody does. I've seen people mention this too, but I don't think anybody knows what it means. Then Palpatine's Force lightning is it's stupidly overpowered. It's godlike. He shoots up Force lightning into the atmosphere, into space, that actually destroys ships. Like mass Force lightning that goes up and spreads out into space and like blows shit up. He didn't have any of this type of power in any of the other movies, and suddenly he's back in a decrepit body and he's godlike in power. Okay. There is one positive thing, the final thing in my notes. At least the Ewoks didn't dance and sing at the end of this. And I say that because the Ewoks did show up in this. They had to make a cameo appearance on this moon of Endor. And they are shown like cheering at the end of it feels again like it's meaningless, but they're shown cheering at the end of the final battle. I felt nothing, of course, but at least they didn't break into song and dance and start doing their wub wub song or whatever. I'll give the movie that. That's the one positive thing. But JJ couldn't help himself putting the Ewoks in there. Of course not, right? I mean, it had to be done. But like a lot of other stuff in this film, you end up feeling nothing. It just feels like a hollow thing to put in there, almost for marketing again. Although I don't remember any of the marketing showing the Ewoks. It probably should have, but it didn't. Anyway, that's everything on my 2.5 sheets. And, let's go through a few more of these. Why not? 2 stars. A truly disappointing end to a franchise that had potential. This film is overstuffed with story arcs that should have been spread over 2 films or a longer 3-hour Star Wars epic. This thing felt like 3 hours as it was. 3 hours. Yeah, please release like J.J. Abrams' special director's cut and make it 4 hours. See how that goes. Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley are the only highlights in this movie. No, they're not. Their acting is fine. There's nothing wrong with their acting, but their characters are meaningless. They're not highlights. They're just like there doing stuff. And, I'll say that they're worse than highlights because, when you look at, I didn't write this in my notes because it's on the edge for me, but when you look at the lightsaber battle between Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley, between Kylo Ren and Rey, it's not good. Like, it's nowhere near what anything in the prequels was. It looks like half-ass. It looks like people fighting with lightsabers that don't know really too much about what they're doing. It's not competent at all. It's not competent sword fighting in any way. It's more like just like teenagers like play acting at sword fighting. And at least in The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson had like all this choreography going on between the throne room guards and Rey and Kylo Ren, and as phony as it was, and for the crazy mistakes it had that they tried to cover up with CGI, it had at least choreography. It was visually at least fun to look at, even though it was nonsensical and stupid. This, it just looked like 2 actors play fighting with laser swords. Not really a highlight for me. It looked like something to prove once again that J.J. Abrams is incompetent, that he was too lazy to even choreograph a fight. I mean, very bad, very bad. 1 star, July 22nd. This one was somehow even worse. I don't have the energy to get into it right now, but my God, can we go back to the prequel days, please? Well, like I said, the prequels were competent in a lot of ways, despite being seriously flawed and screwed up by George Lucas. But they weren't incompetent, and they weren't offensive, and they were still very much Star Wars, and they didn't ruin Star Wars canon. So yeah, half a star. Worst movie in the Skywalker saga by far. Takes a flamethrower to everything we loved about the originals. Renders Kylo impotent and makes Rey an overpowered Force demigod. Worst of all, it's entirely derivative, counting on fan service and expensive CGI to win over fans, and to some extent it worked. Yeah, it must have. It must have, because an 86%, unwavering 86% audience score since its opening weeks. Yeah, it had to work with people. It really did, because I believe the numbers. Half a star, probably the worst mainstream movie in the last 2 decades. Probably the worst, one of the worst popular movies. Yeah. One of the worst tentpole movies. Yeah, definitely. One of the most disappointing. It's sad to see a $1 billion company with all the resources you could imagine put out this kind of dreck. Like, it's hard to imagine, but it happened. 1.5 stars. This is an awful movie. Palpatine's return, without a doubt, makes it so that victory at the end of Return of the Jedi and Vader's sacrifice were completely pointless. Yes, it does. J.J. Abrams has no imagination whatsoever. He couldn't think of anything better than bringing back the Emperor, really. This movie is just a nonsensical plot surrounding Palpatine. We have to find the thing to find the thing to find Palpatine. It is so fast paced, you don't have time to think and realize how stupid and nonsensical the plot is. Well, almost. Almost. Like, it was so fast paced that maybe there were a few things that got by me, but no, I was still writing down 2.5 pages of stuff despite the fast pacing. So it was, yeah, the fast pacing, if that's what it was meant to do, it didn't work, because uh, there was so much stuff. I was pausing this thing every 2 minutes to write something down, a problem that I saw that was enough to bother me. I mean, a lot of movies, I'll say, I've gone into movies that I thought would be bad, that I would have a notebook of stuff to write down about it, or a page of stuff, and I've had a blank page. Like, I've done a few rotten reviews like that, or maybe I didn't call them rotten reviews, I called them contrarian reviews for that reason, because I had sat down with my pen in hand thinking, yeah, I'll be pausing this to write things down. And I forgot that I even had the notebook here, because I was swept up in it enough where, you know what, despite its flaws, if I forgot to write anything down, that I was even there to write anything down with it to critique, then I would say the movie was good, or it was successful in getting me swept up into it. And this wasn't one of those. It was the opposite. I mean, I was writing so much that, pausing it was getting ridiculous, the amount of times I had to pause it to write something down. Half a star. This movie is beyond horrific. It doesn't even make sense. I've watched all the Star Wars movies and it doesn't even compare to the older ones. Please don't waste your time watching this movie. It's worse than X-Men Dark Phoenix. At least that's tolerable. Yes, I'll admit I saw X-Men Dark Phoenix very late in the game as well, probably about a month and a half ago. And yeah, it's better than this. Yeah, it's not good. It's got a lot of problems, and it's like an example of the X-Men franchise, petering away, and it should have been put out of its misery. But this is far worse as a movie. Just as a general movie, this is far worse. And the budget is so much higher with this, and the marketing so much higher. And it's just the resources that went into this movie, and it's worse than X-Men Dark Phoenix. That's pretty sad. Half a star, very, very, very bad movie. Half a star. It was terrible at best. You don't need to be a longtime Star Wars fan to see the flaws: abusive plot devices, plot holes, poor dialogues, inconsistent character development. There are problems in virtually every single scene. Yes, what did I just say? I was pausing it nonstop to write down problems. I have no idea how they managed to produce such a bad movie. Visuals are impressive, although I find the editing is often disturbing. It pains me to be so negative about it, but it's just such a shame. Yeah, it is. 2 stars. Fast-paced, frantic motion without an ounce of thought. The effects were good, individual shots were amazing, the story was an insane, disjointed fetch quest, and the characters were wasted. Don't watch it if you're going to think about it, but probably fine if you just want to turn your brain off while you watch something pretty, if you don't have to pay for it. Yeah, that's the key thing. If you don't have to pay for it, you're not going to be angry. Like I said, I went out on this ship, out on these tall waves, and that's where I acquired my viewing. Um, if you pay for this, well, that's all on you because maybe if you paid for Disney Plus and you're so drunk and bored, I mean, I have no, I've got this thing right now. I could watch it again. I don't know why I would. I won't even do it to try to, answer a question in this review. I mean, I won't go back to it. 2 stars. I don't have much to say that's positive about this movie. You want to know if it'll entertain Disney and millions of bucks of JJ, you'll get money's worth of entertainment, but I can't guarantee you'll like it at every moment. Um, I don't know about entertainment. Again, to me, it's like an amusement park ride on rails that, those don't really entertain me that much. So I would say no. It's not entertainment at all. It's just a whole lot of nothing. 2 stars, a very disappointing finale to the well-loved Star Wars saga. It's an absolute mess. Listen to the critics. Yeah, well, half of the critics said they liked it. That's why it has a 51%, and I think top critics it's like 47 or 48%. But about half of them thought this was a fresh movie. So make sure you don't listen to those half, because it's just bizarre that half of them and 86% of the audience thought this was good. But that's the truth of it. Half a star. It pains me that this exists. Illogical, narrative mess. Every sin in cinema. Star Wars is a legendary franchise, but Disney made a movie so awful that's going to take several years to recover from. Well, as I said, they should let Star Wars just lie dormant film-wise for at least 15 years. Do a do-over, and I don't mean do remakes of the original trilogy, please don't. I mean do something new we haven't seen before, but do it long after people have forgotten about this. That would be my plan. 2 stars, the cinematic equivalent of season 8 of Game of Thrones, a complete rushed mess, attempts to wrap up way too many storylines and ends up being completely unsatisfying, a total forgettable shambles. Yes. Half a star. Last trilogy is even worse than second trilogy of Star Wars in pretty much everything. Episode 1 were made for little children's, and second was just a lot of CGI leaving history behind. Third episode were quite good, I'll admit. Original ones were masterpieces. And then we have this trilogy. Force Awakens was pretty good. I even got really excited by all this new history, and I couldn't wait to see more. But Rian Johnson made the worst Star Wars movie I've ever seen. Destroyed, yeah. I see where they're going. They largely agree with what I've said. Um, 2 stars. I think there is only one way to move on. Rey has to wake up and realize this was all just a dream. Well, again, that's like retconning it by saying this was in an alternate universe somehow. You can do it, but it's not going to work because this thing is out there and it's not going to go away. You can't like make all the Blu-rays disappear from existence. It's not going to happen. 1.5 stars. Movie of convenience, answer to any problem along the way. The hero has zero burden and makes for laughable story. On a positive note, it is aesthetically pleasing. Last Jedi was awful, and this movie tries to work around it, but the end result is 2.5 hours of convenience and plot armor. Yeah, it all adds up to nothing. A lot of money was put into nothing. 2 stars, campy and repetitive. Any attempt at humor or decent dialogue missed the mark. Exactly. It wasn't campy because the camp all failed. Like I said, it took me a while to recognize where they were intending humor because that's how flat and non-humorous the humor was. This is like a lesson on how to fail at Marvel type humor. 1.5 stars. Slight improvement on the last car crash, but not much. It feels rushed and incoherent and just a shambolic mess from what used to be a great franchise. It's sad to see the demise of Star Wars, and this Disney trilogy has truly been atrocious from start to finish. This was a total cringe fest. Yeah, I would have cringed, but it was too much nothing to cringe. I was too busy writing down flaws. Like, I guess if I had been emotionally invested into it at some point, it would have made me cringe, but I have to be honest, I never even cringed at this because it just felt like an empty Disney park attraction, and there wasn't even anything to cringe at. I wasn't emotionally invested in it to begin with. Half a star, not English, but I think we get the point. Yeah, what can I say? 98,000 people contributing to that audience score, and 86% of them thought this was good or liked it. Half the critics liked it. I don't know what to say. I'm just saying that, I guess I'm just saying it's going to remain a mystery for me, because I'll never understand why this isn't like, say, a 20% on the tomato meter and maybe a 50% at best on the audience score. Why it's any higher than that, I don't know. It'll remain a total mystery. Maybe somebody will make a video after this in the future. Who knows? Maybe they'll be able to finally give us the answer, but this is going to be one of those unsolved mysteries for me. And I'm just going to have to say, I do not recommend this movie. If you just want to consume something that you're left with an empty feeling, the best I can say is that you won't be pissed off. That's the best I can say about this. And so I am going to sign off on this episode of Rotten Reviews. And I'm going to try to, well, I'm not even going to have to try. I'm going to forget all about this film. So I'll see you next time.